So I'm joined today by Emma Ellice-Flint, who is our nutritionist here at Newson Health and is also one of the co-authors of the Happy Hormone Cookbook. So it's great to have you here. And also my lovely colleague Alice Duffy, who's a GP working with me here in the clinic. And we're going to talk about diet and the menopause. So we've had some questions sent to us from some ladies. So we were going to talk a little bit about sort of weight issues around this time of life, and then we'll talk a little bit about our sort of nutritional needs around this time of life and about our gut bacteria and things. So I thought maybe we'd start with talking about weight, and there's all sorts of reasons why women struggle around the menopause, but almost all women will complain about weight gain. And is that something that you can identify with, Alice, when you're seeing your ladies?
Yeah, I think this is a really common complaint for women. I think there's such a lot of change that happens around about the menopause, how they feel about themselves, and one of the things that they do want to try to focus on is trying to restrain themselves with regards to the weight gain that happens around about the menopause. And unfortunately, it is common for women to gain weight around the menopause. On average, women will put on probably about half a stone around about the menopause, and sadly, it does that horrible thing where it centres itself centrally. So it tends to be around our abdomen, around our buttocks, where we really do not want that additional weight. And that's largely to do with the metabolic changes that happen in the body as the estrogen levels start to fall. So we start to get fat deposition like men get fat deposition. And of course, for us as healthcare professionals, we're actually concerned to make sure that we don't add a visceral fat to that, which of course increases your health risks. But I think it's important that women know they're not really doing anything wrong. It's changes in the metabolism, it's changes in the way that perhaps they're eating now, because of course you don't feel great around the menopause. Often your motivation to do your normal exercise routine diminishes because you've got joint aches, you're sore in the morning, you're stiff, and it starts to slip. And it's really important that we do try to keep our normal exercise regime going and just stick to a normal healthy diet as we've been doing to date.
Yeah, it's almost a double whammy, isn't it? There's physiological changes which happen around this age anyway, which make us gain weight, and then we feel awful, so we make poorer health choices, which makes the problem worse.
Yeah, and we comfort ourselves, with snacks really we shouldn't probably be having. We maybe drink more alcohol, which of course is very calorific, and we tend to forget about that because it's liquid. So the whole thing contributes to the weight gain.
Yeah. Do you find, Emma, that women are making choices which are clearly not helping with weight?
Alice is right, absolutely. That's the thing. It's twofold. It's the physiological changes, but also that mood change that can happen. And so that does lead to like comfort eating and things like that. And yes, perhaps reaching for a glass of wine more often in the evening, that sort of thing, that happens. And so that tummy weight, that visceral fat, like you were saying, just comes on more likely with the lowering in the estrogen.
And we know, don't we, that there's so many benefits to losing weight. We're going to help our the health of our heart and our arteries in general, and we're going to help lower our risk of breast cancer. So that's really helpful, because women worry so much about HRT because there's this perceived risk about breast cancer, but actually if they could lose weight, actually they will do themselves far more favours with the breast cancer risk. So there's lots of reasons, aren't there? And self-esteem, of course, is an important issue. So what sort of things can women do in order to try and sort of get on top of their weight issues? What are the sort of basic advice?
I think it's key about, first and foremost, try to think about what's your motivation. What made you exercise before? What gave you some joy? What needs did that fulfil for women? Because I think sometimes it's easy not to prioritise those around the menopause when you've got caring responsibilities. You might have ageing parents, you've got teenage children. It's easy for the woman to no longer be the focus. And it's about thinking, what do I gain from doing that exercise? So that'll give you the motivation to keep your exercise going and trying to get some structure. But as I say, it's hard when you're not feeling so good, you're not feeling so well, and perhaps maybe focus on the kind of diet you want your children to have. What sort of nutrition do you want them to be following? So you're setting their patterns. We have a real big problem in this country with childhood obesity, and a really key message is trying to educate children at home. So sometimes we won't motivate ourselves to do it for ourselves, but we will motivate ourselves to do it for our children and the people that we care about. So it's about focusing more globally on the health message to your whole family, so that you can start to eat more healthily.
Yeah, we live a life of convenience, don't we?
You do.
So we're missing out on the fruit and the veg and the herbs and we're tending to go for sugar. Is that what you find? With
Absolutely.
A lot of
Comforting with sugar and high carbohydrate foods like white flour products, cakes and biscuits and pies, that sort of food. Yeah, exactly. White flour stuff. Yeah.
And there's so we're moving now, aren't we, towards trying to reduce sugar in things and sweeten things more naturally and have more sort of fruit-based sugars and
I think
that
especially I think it's great. So it's better if a person is in control of how much sweetness they add to food than just buying something where a corporation has chosen how much sugar you have in a product, if you get what I mean. So if you like natural yogurt, live natural yogurt, fantastic for the body. It's got probiotics in it, and that's fantastic. But if you just get natural yogurt and you just add a little bit, say honey or something to it, you choose the level of sweetness you want in that suits your taste buds, and you're going to enjoy it. Not a company that sweetened it up for you. And that's sort of what I'm talking about as well.
You can walk around or run around the supermarket when you're busy and think, oh, I'm going to go low fat, and I'll have this low fat yogurt. And actually, when you read the details, actually, it's absolutely stinking full of sugar. And actually the fat is okay, in moderation, and there's some good things about fat, but sugar is almost never good, because once we've had enough sugar for our energy, the rest is then stored as fat.
Absolutely. So and it elevates our insulin levels, so it elevates our blood glucose levels, as you girls know, which produces that kind of insulin rush and the spike and everything, which actually can make us feel worse. That's the point. So if we reach for it as a comfort food, in fact, it's going to have that detrimental kind of effect, that knock-on effect of making us feel really yuck afterwards. I
think the message I give people often is, people are busy. We have to appreciate that people do make choices, but it's about making informed choices. Know the calorie content, know what's in the food you're choosing. If you've got a choice between two foods that you like equally, actually inform yourself about the calorie intake from each one and choose the one that's going to have less calories, so you don't have to run them all off later on.
And less sugar.
And I think the other really important thing in relation to the menopause is that all too frequently all of us see women who are really, really struggling with their menopausal symptoms and feel absolutely dreadful. Physically they feel drained, mentally they're sort of a shadow of their former self, and it's all very well us saying, well, why don't you go for a run or join a yoga class or eat a low sugar diet, and they look at you as if to say, I can barely get out of bed in the morning, let alone make those sorts of choices. And so I think what's also incredibly important, as well as all the lifestyle changes we could make, is to recognise that actually we need to be giving a woman options about dealing with her menopause, because I'm certainly aware, I'm sure you two have seen as well, that actually for some women they need their hormones replacing, as long as that's appropriate for that individual woman, in order to feel better enough to be able to then change their life and alter their lifestyle. Is that?
I think that's very true.
Definitely. Yeah, that's right.
So shifting focus slightly, I think there is a lot more growing interest now, isn't there, in what we eat, and actually we often point the finger at what we prescribe women and drugs that we take, and is this safe, is that not safe, and actually sometimes we completely overlook what we put in our body on a daily basis, and actually what we eat is essentially what we are. So we are starting now to focus, aren't we, on our nutrients more, and there's this growing sort of awareness of what are these friendly bacteria that are in our gut that actually help us with digestion and our general health. So I know that's something you know a lot about, Emma. That's your life, really, isn't it? So can you sort of talk us through what we mean when we're talking about gut health and what these sort of microbiome is all about?
Well, what we're beginning to realise, I think we've known for years, but what we're beginning to realise now is that if our gut is in a happy, healthy place, including our gut, feeding our gut microbes, then actually overall we feel a lot better. We feel a lot brighter, and our mood is usually better, and we have less bloated stomach, and we have more energy, and just basically like more vitality and vibrancy. So going down there into this large intestine in your gut, it was just billions of bacteria there, and they're all living on the lovely soupy gloopy kind of mucousy almost sort of lining of the lumen of the gut wall, and there they are, and they're living what's called symbiotically with us. So they're living with us. They live off our food, and but they also give us so many other byproducts. They help us produce some vitamins, and they also help us produce, add to like the happy hormone production, like serotonin and things like that. So they help us digest our food. So they're really vital, and it's about feeding them just as much as feeding us physiologically.
So they're looking after us, and we should be looking after them.
Exactly, and living in this lovely synergistic kind of world down there, a large intestine, a very happy place. We want it to be. Think of that sort of muddy, gloopy, soupy happiness. Visualize it. And what do we feed them? And therefore, are we feeding ourselves? So, yes, fibre is really important, but there's many different types of fibre. And really that whole plant kingdom, so we're talking about vegetables and fruits, and we're talking about nuts and seeds and legumes and pulses. That whole plant kingdom, it feeds them just as much as it feeds us. It's fantastic. And you can imagine, so you almost don't need to drill down into specific foods. You're just talking about that whole lovely variety in the plant kingdom, just bringing that into your everyday eating.
I think I heard when we were at the British Menopause Society talk earlier in the year, and I hadn't actually appreciated that there's a two-way communication pathway between your brain and your gut.
Yes.
So not only is the brain sending messages to your gut about what to do, actually it's communicating back, and that's how it has an impact on our mood, isn't it, Emma? Which is really interesting, because we didn't get taught anything about that in medical school, did we? I know. It's a very passive thing.
Absolutely.
It was just processing your foods. Yeah.
Yes, and that is a really strong area of research now to do with mood and food and that bi-directional communication. And it really does. I think, if you start eating a fairly whole foods sort of diet and eating a bit better, you feel better mentally. You really do. It does elevate your mood.
Yeah, I knew that theoretically,
yes,
and I from the job I do, I know that's what we we advocate to patients, and when there's nothing you learn quicker from than personal experiences there, and I've always thought I was quite a healthy individual, and I did home cooked food and tried to feed my children healthily, and I do an awful lot of exercise, and I'm already on my HRT, so I thought I'm pretty much ticking most of the boxes, but actually maybe I don't, if there was some area that was going to fall down, it was going to be diet, because when you are busy you maybe don't always completely follow. And so I've been as good as gold, and it's lovely having got to know you as I have, to actually be able to follow slightly different recipes and things, and I have been absolutely gobsmacked at the change, and actually think this isn't just hocus pocus, this is absolutely true.
Oh, that's interesting.
Actually, if you just feed your body and respect your gut a little bit more,
that's a good word, respecting your gut. Absolutely, respecting your body. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah.
So, Emma, what is this thing called kefir, which everybody seems to be the buzzword, isn't it? What is kefir?
Okay, well, kefir is a kind of a collection of microbes that are good bacteria, I guess you call it, a collection of microbes that ferment up dairy food, or in fact ferment up kind of sugared water. You can get water kefir or dairy kefir. In the shops generally you get the dairy kefir, and it's just this collection of microbes that fermented up in the similar way that yogurt is fermented up by acidophilus and bifidus bacteria, which are good for the gut. They found it's good for the gut. Kefir is similar, but they're different microbes, and I can't even name them all. There's literally in the supermarket kefir you buy, there's about 30 different microbes in there, all good for your gut. And in fact, if you make kefir at home, you often get about 30 to 40 different microbes in there, so they're different from a yogurt, but it's a similar action. It's a fermented food that is liked in your gut and produces good gut effects and helps to colonize up your gut microbiota, your microbiome. It's great.
So how does one make it?
Well, I brought some along, okay, Here's one I made earlier. Okay, so I wanted you all to see what kefir looks like. So
it looks like cottage cheese.
Exactly. These, if you can just see that, these are the grains. They're called grains, but they're really kind of spongy cottage cheesy mass. And they are actually what's fermenting up this milk in this jam jar in this case. And what you do is, it's so easy. It's much easier than yogurt, actually. You get hold of some of the starter grains from a friend or a health food shop or something like that, or me, or you come to my fermented food class. And what you do is you just add it to some milk. And you just leave it in a jam jar, sealed up. You don't have to leave it open, on your bench overnight. And in the morning, it's made a kefir milk. And you just strain away those grains, and you get the kind of the milky, kind of slightly yogurty like kefir. And that's got that probiotic goodness in it. And then you strain away the grains and you start again, and it just grows, and your grains grow and multiply like any living organism would. So you give more to your friends. And that's it. It's so simple and so beneficial.
The grains then, Emma?
Oh yes, you do. So you strain out the fermented milk and you reuse the grains each time. Okay. And that fermented milk is just that's what you then eat in a smoothie, or you pour it on top of maybe your oat breakfast or something like that. It's kind of not as nice tasting in a sense on its own as yogurt is, perhaps. It's a little bit more sour tasting. So it's best to perhaps blend it in with other things. But it's just great, and it's so easy. There's not even any warming up the milk, like with yogurt making. It's so easy. It's great.
I had a patient recently who talked about making your kefir, and she said, I don't like the milk taste. She said, so I do a little shot. So she shots it.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. There you go. Brilliant. And it's absolutely fantastic, because it's teeming with good beneficial microorganisms for your gut microbiome.
Easy.
Okay. It is easy.
So a very quick chat about supplements. There's a million supplements out there, and it's very easy to get confused. But what we wanted to just talk about was the basics, basically. What should women really think about taking? And then there's a few sort of frills. So Alice?
Yes, I think we focus predominantly on bone health and looking at vitamin D and calcium. So I think women can check, actually. So the recommendations are that women should take calcium in their diet. They can look online to calculate how much calcium's in their diet. It's only recommended you take calcium supplements if you're not getting enough calcium in your diet. However, vitamin D, NHS guidelines are now that all of us who live in the UK between October and April should actually take a daily vitamin D supplement because we don't get enough exposure to sunlight. And then people who are either housebound or who cover their skin or who wear sunblock in the summer months, they should take a vitamin D supplement throughout the year. And you can't really take too much vitamin D. It's not known to be harmful.
Can't overdose on vitamin D.
No.
And Emma, so just briefly, if vitamin D, I would say definitely most important, and supplement calcium if you are low in it, which some vegans are, for example.
Yes.
Anything else that if you're going to add anything to that, what do you think?
I think, by the way, vitamin D is better absorbed if you take it with food as well. Yeah. It's anyway, that's good. Vitamin D supplement. I think I might add to that fish oils. Would be good quality fish oils would be quite beneficial, especially once you get into that kind of menopausal age group and beyond. There is evidence to show that fish oils are very beneficial, both for overall health and like anti-inflammatory sort of stuff, but also for mood as well, improving the mood. There is evidence about that. Also, magnesium seems to be quite beneficial. I've seen that's very dependent on the individual, but magnesium seems to really help with certain things. Sometimes maybe aches and pains, but sometimes even kind of mentally almost. That's, as I said, that's very individual, but I would say those two are quite beneficial as well.
Often helps with sleep, doesn't it?
And sleep, absolutely. Especially, taken in the evening is a good one. And funnily enough, it helps with bowel movements the next day. I always get back to the bowel movements. Always. I'm surprised it's taken me this long today to talk about poo, but
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.